Hello and welcome to Time Travelers. I made a video back in early August of 2015 entitled The Problems with Time Travel, where I went over a few issues involved with the possibility of it occurring. In light of this, there were a few cases in which people have claimed to have done the impossible, and I wanted to go over them here. So it is said there are quite a few stories that started from fictional sources and blew up to legitimacy. With this video, I'll go over the more, dare I say, plausible entries in this topic. Philadelphia Experiment. In a previous video, I went into depth about the events that took place on October 28, 1943. I figured I'd get the most popular and famous event out of the way first. I should state that with this incident, it is considered plausible if the events of what happened are accurate. Between August 12th and October 28, 1943, the U.S. Navy performed tests on the USS Eldridge, a destroyer-class ship under the code name of Project Rainbow. It is unclear what the tests were originally supposed to deal with some saying it was to use magnets to make ships unable to be affected by magnetic mines, while other theories state that it was an attempt to cause the ships to become invisible. Whatever the tests were used for, the results were quite unexpected. Apparently everything was going to plan until the electromagnetic field surrounding the ship began to spread out further and further, causing the ship to glow green and become hazy to the viewers on the shore. After a period of time and unexpectedly, the ship vanished from sight and reportedly reappeared over 300 miles away off the coast of Norfolk, Virginia, within seconds to a minute. If that wasn't strange enough, the crew members experienced some odd occurrences as well. While on board the ship, some discovered they could walk through walls and handrails. Sadly, when the electromagnetic device was turned off, some of the sailors were left embedded in bulkheads. Outside of this, the crew members who lived began having difficulty basically staying phased in this time frame. Something they called the freeze was when people would completely vanish from sight, but unlike a spirit, they couldn't move or interact with the world around them. Apparently this affliction occurred for only a few minutes at a time, but as time went on, it became called the deep freeze, when the effects started happening for days or months. What is truly interesting is that if someone vanished into the freeze, other people who were crew members on the Eldridge during the experiment could still see them. Once these reports started pouring in, the military shut down the project for good. According to the military, the experiment and project never existed. They even provided documentation stating that the USS Eldridge wasn't even near Philadelphia during the time frame. This does not rule out the events from actually happening, as the government frequently denies things existing, only to acknowledge it many years later. As for the documentation, it could have been faked to provide further proof of their claims. One point I should mention is that reportedly Nikola Tesla and Albert Einstein played a hand in developing the technology utilized in the tests performed on that day in Philadelphia. I've always held that if anyone would have been able to figure out time travel, it would have been those two. Not as it seems. Not all of our reports on time travel involve people actively trying to do so, as the following story shows. In 1935, Air Marshal Sir Victor Goddard was sent out on a mission to inspect an unused airfield in Edinburgh, Scotland, near a location known as Drem. As a little backstory, the airfield was created in 1916 by the Royal Air Force and named the West Fenton Aerodrome in the area of Drem. In 1918, it was renamed the Gulian Aerodrome, and only a year later, it was abandoned except for squadrons visiting it occasionally. Going back to the incident, Sir Goddard was flying over the base and noted how it was dilapidated, and even mentioned that the cows were eating the grass that had begun to grow from the cracks in the tarmac. While flying back, he came across a huge rainstorm that made his flight difficult. Without much choice, Sir Goddard decided to turn back around and take shelter at the airfield in Drem. According to his story, the rain cloud suddenly disappeared as he neared the base, and the weather changed to a bright sunny day. If that wasn't odd enough, as he flew over the airstrip he had just investigated, he saw a totally different sight. The base was in perfect condition, and he even saw airplane mechanics on the ground in blue jumpsuits. At the time, mechanics were required to wear khaki colors. Outside of this, he saw planes that were painted a brilliant yellow, and he had never seen aircraft that looked like them before. Again, during this time, all RAF aircraft would be painted in a silvery aluminum paint scheme. It is at this point that it isn't mentioned if he recounted what he saw when he returned home. However, it is noted that 4 years later he returned to the airstrip in Drem and found that the mechanics were wearing the blue outfits and the yellow planes were at the base. These planes are called a Miles Magister and is a trainer airplane. This plane's first flight was on March 20th, 1937 and didn't go into production until October of that same year. So what happened here? Did Sir Goddard get caught in a time slip where he was able to see the future? I should note that in 1939 the airfield was completely fixed up after being abandoned for 20 years and was renamed the RAF Drem and was a flying training school. John Titor. We get to the topic that started this whole video idea and was suggested to me by one of my viewers by the name of Chad Prokop. The story is a little bit odd, and while it is very interesting, many people rule it as an all-out hoax. I myself can see issues with it, but at the same time can argue a point that may make it seem more valid. So who or what was John Titor? Commonly it is mentioned that John started making posts on the Time Travel Institute forums under the name of Time Travel Zero on November 2nd of 2000. Within this forum he took part in many discussions about what it would take to travel in time. On January 2001, John started using his full name on the Art Bell BBS forum. With his post, he relayed that he was a soldier from the year 2036 who had stopped back to the year 2000 to collect photos he had lost during a future civil war. Also, he stated that he wished to warn people of upcoming tragedy. Many people didn't believe him at first, obviously, but he provided images of his time machine, which include military-style manuals, his military insignia, as well as an in-depth answer to anyone's questions. During his post, he conveyed that the multi-universe theory of time was correct, and the grandfather paradox couldn't occur due to this. If you are unaware, this theory states that every decision you make follows one time frame, while the other decision follows out on its own time frame. I'll try to include an image that shows this more clearly. Within his post, he made many predictions, such as the Olympics being cancelled in 2004, there'd be a civil war that would spearhead after a controversial presidential election in 2004 and erupt in 2008, and that in 2015 we would be in World War III. In March of 2001, John stated he was going home, and to this day, no one has heard of him since. I would like to point out that John Titor has a history way before the commonly discussed forum posts that made him relatively famous. Originally, he had faxed warnings to the Art Bell Coast to Coast AM radio show, giving warnings about the Y2K bug in 1998. A few investigators dug into the mystery of John Titor and came up empty-handed in 2008. In 2009, John Houston of the website called Hoax Hunters did find that the name John Titor was licensed to a Florida entertainment lawyer by the name of Larry Haber. When you tie this all together with the predictions, does that mean that the story is an obvious hoax? Not necessarily. The entertainment group could have licensed the name in case a movie was ever to be made about this strange case. In fact, the whole story of John was turned into an anime on October 15th, 2009, called Steins Gate. As for the predictions turning out wrong, he stated in a few commentaries that there is a 2.5% change in events between his time and those that he visits. With this, it makes his predictions able to never be outright false. Given this leeway, the events he described could happen in one time frame, but not in ours currently. This almost falls in line with chaos theory, which I am certain many of you have heard in relation to a butterfly flapping its wings causing a windstorm elsewhere. Maybe due to him talking about the future events was enough to cause those events not to occur. With this topic, you literally can drive yourself insane, since honestly, anything is possible. As for John Titor, we may never know if he was legitimate or not. As I end this video, I did want to mention that George Noory runs the Coast to Coast AM radio show now, and on April 4th of 2011, he posted an article stating that a patent for the same exact time machine John Titor described and used was issued to Marlin B. Pullman on October 1st, 2004. Maybe things are in the works to prove John's story after all. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.